Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Multi-Location Marketing Show. I'm Elliot Olson here with my co-host, Matt Nickols. And we are going to talk about kind of an extension from last week. So last week we covered how to calculate your opportunity from an organic visibility perspective. We kind of talked through, just how to make that happen, how to really understand that. And then this week we are diving more into ROI, how to take that organic visibility and the opportunity you see and actually understand how that, how to make a case and how to see what your return on investment can be for the amount of resources you put into that. And so Matt, maybe you could just kind of give us an idea of why being able to actually calculate your ROI is important. I know it's kind of an obvious thing, but there's a lot of people who that we talk to who don't really always have a good understanding of that, and understanding why and understanding how is going to really support them.
Sure. Well, I think with any marketing, one of the things you always think about, the reason you do marketing is to grow your business, to build more awareness. And there's different levels. There's sometimes you're doing things that are top of funnel just to build brand awareness. That's a lot harder to equate to like an ROI. And sometimes it just has to be a business expenditure. There are some ways to do that. But then when you get down at the local level to doing really tactical things, like you're spending money on digital ads, you're doing an organic visibility program, you're investing in those local websites, content and content marketing, social media, traditional media like radio or TV or direct mail. I mean, all those things, can be effective in addition to a lot of other tactics people use. So we're going to talk about some of the big ones that we see people really utilizing for multi-location local marketing. So if you're marketing across many local markets and you're either supporting local representatives, you're providing co-op dollars, or if you have corporate locations or, you're funding it from a corporate level, in all those scenarios, a return is always really important. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're spending in areas that are giving you a positive return, but also you're understanding what tactics are providing the best return so that you can reinforce those areas of success and stop spending money on areas that aren't producing results, and spend more of your resources on areas that are working well. And it also helps, up front as you're trying to get some of these programs in place to get buy-in, obviously from your executive team or other influencers on your team as you're making decisions. So having those kinds of numbers really can help you build that case and get the things done that you want to get done. You also a lot of times have to get buy-in from people at the local level, depending on your network and whether you're controlling everything or you're helping support them, but they're making the final decision. Either way, you always want to be able to show the return you're getting for the dollars that you're spending in and the value that you're bringing to the table. So that's why I think this topic is really important, and it can really help you as a marketer to get done the things you want and to be able to really allocate the resources that you have to the areas that are going to make the biggest impact for your organization and your local representatives.
Yeah, definitely great for creating accountability. If you're working with an agency or if you're an agency that's trying to prove your value to a prospective client, understanding how to calculate ROI is just a vital business thing. And also if you're trying to kind of expand on what you said, Matt, if you're trying to create a business case or you're trying to really communicate with people who aren't in the weeds like you are while you're making the decisions you're making and what's best for your organization. Obviously if you're a CEO, you can just say, hey, we're going to do this. But if you're somebody who's been put in charge and responsible for local marketing, having some of these different variables in place and tracking the certain things that we're going to be talking about today can really help you come across as really owning your space, really being an authority on what's happening in the business and can win you a lot of points and help you make a lot more decisions more quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Forward.
Definitely helps in career advancement and, getting raises and things like that too. As you show the things that you're doing are working and they're bringing value to the company. So it's great as a marketer to have that information and to be able to use that effectively, both to get implemented the ideas that you want, but then also to get credit for the value that you're bringing to the table. And, as an organization, we do the same thing. Our agency partners, everybody's got to show value and attribution, and, it's so important today towards marketing. And that's one of the great things about digital marketing is we can really track and measure a lot of these things. So it's a very powerful tool if you get it set up and you know what, your KPIs are and the metrics you need to track so that you can calculate these things, both upfront and then, as the programs actually roll out and you're getting real data back on performance as well.
Right on. Yeah. And we've, so before we get into this, just want to quickly mention, we've created a tool to kind of outline how we calculate ROI for our clients and kind of what we take them through. And we're going to make that available to you guys. And so we're going to give you what you need to know from a high level. And then if you want to dig more deeply into that, we'll have a link in the show notes where you can download the document we're going to be walking through. So Matt, if you want to kind of just get started, what comes first when we're looking to calculate ROI?
Sure. Well, every tactic is going to have a little bit different, data points that you're using. So just to kind of, continue with the conversation we had on the last podcast, where we were really talking about how do we understand like the organic opportunity that's out there. And we talked about, looking at the top keywords that were important to your business, and then, looking at each of the geographies and then getting kind of where you're ranking for those things, understanding, where you're positioned and what that means as far as organic traffic. So we talked about if you're, in the top 3, that's where over 50% of the traffic comes from. And then it just kind of falls off the table after you get out of the top 5 or 6 listings in search. And if you're off of page 1, in essence, you're invisible. So how do you then kind of take that data, like here's how we're performing, and how do we take that data and say, well, if we were to improve that performance, what would that mean to the bottom line, right? How many leads are we going to generate? How much revenue is that going to bring to the company versus how much we're paying to invest in this effort? And that becomes really important. And we can then, as we go through this organic example, we can then also kind of apply this to other channels and tactics like digital advertising, social media. It really could be used with any tactic. So, and it may be really basic for someone if you're used to doing a lot of these numbers and things, but I think there'll be some good insights for you as to kind of how we do organic. The trouble with organic is that over the years, Google, who obviously is the market leader, I've seen, a lot of studies that show it can range, but generally 85% of search is done through Google. So they are, the 800-pound gorilla in the space. So we most when you're talking about organic, you're basically talking about Google, and they've gotten real stingy with their data. So they used to provide a lot more accurate like search volume data and things like that. So but anymore, they just provide pretty vague ranges that can be really wide ranges as well. And generally, you have to look at data at a national level in terms of search volume, because they don't have a lot of really good local data. So if you want to see how many people are searching for any service like in-home healthcare for seniors, or furnace repair, or any number of searches, you can look at those at a national level and then kind of try to extrapolate, what that would look like, based on the population size, because generally they're not going to have enough data to give you, furnace repair in, Indianapolis, Indiana. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. So kind of the approach that we've started out with is, using the actual data that you have as an organization. So in tools like Google Analytics, you're going to be able to really separate out traffic that's you're currently generating from organic search. And if you have things set up correctly, you can tell how much traffic is originating from kind of like national type searches that would go to your corporate site and searches with more local intent that would hit maybe your location pages or your individual, if you have like local websites for your local representatives or locations, you can look at the traffic there and kind of see how much organic traffic you're currently generating. And some of the tools like Google Search Console and things like that can give you a little bit more insight into some of the keywords that you're actually ranking for and things like that to kind of help shape the data a little bit for you. But at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is if you can put a number to how much organic traffic you're getting. I usually like to look at a year. You can look at it by month. Some companies have, seasonality in certain months and things like that. So the annual look kind of gives you that full year and all the seasonality kind of baked in together. So that's why we generally like to look at, a year's worth of data. So we get the high months and the low months and everything kind of combined together. And that's where we start at. So let's say you have 500,000, organic sessions, over a 12-month period across all your local markets. Now, when we think back to the previous podcast, if you have that data where you've looked at the rankings and you kind of see, kind of where you're at. So let's say across all your important keywords that have good traffic to them, and that's the lion's share of the things that you're being found for and that you want to be found for. And you look across, all your markets, and you can tell that you're, a certain percentage of your terms are in the top 3, and a certain percentage are, on page 1. That gives you a pretty good idea of kind of where you sit and then how much room there is for growth and improvement, right? And so we'll generally just look at percentage improvement. So we do a lot of data analysis with our customers, and we usually see like where they start out. A lot of times people are, they might be 10% of their terms across all their markets are in the top 3 position, maybe 35% are on page 1. So right there that you have just a huge opportunity for improvement. And we know kind of if you implement a truly localized strategy that has a high degree of local relevance, what kind of percentage improvements that you can expect. So as you start rising up those rankings, you get into some of those much higher numbers of click-through rates, and it just starts driving a lot more traffic. So what I typically do with organic is just say, okay, we have 500,000 visitors, and we think based on the data that we've looked at, by implementing a new strategy, we can move we can improve that by 100% in the first 12 months, or you could say we can improve it by 200%. It's very common, when you kind of move to one of these, if you're doing like, let's say just a single location on a page, a location page on your corporate site, and you move to a more localized strategy with local websites with highly relevant, unique content, that you can see a lot of times anywhere from 200 to 400% growth over that first 12 to 18 months. So you just have to say, by implementing some of these things, it's going to move us up those rankings, and we think we can, very conservatively achieve 100% growth, right? So what I like to do then is say, okay, out of that 100% growth, we had 500,000 and we grew it by, 100%. So we're doubling, the amount of organic traffic that we have to these local properties and our localized sites. And so if you want to look at the net new traffic that you're generating, which is important, so you went from 500,000 to 1 million users by, implementing a new strategy that improved your organic visibility. That means you had a net new of 500,000 visitors to your sites. And the other thing that you can consider is a lot of, our data shows that when traffic goes to a very localized web presence, that it converts at about 30 to 40% on average higher than traffic just going to a national site. And that's generally because people are a little bit lower down in the funnel. They're typically looking for somebody in their local market who can deliver the service, not just researching, the product category or the brand. And it also goes to just the trust factor that they're, hey, this location is down the street from me. They're in my community. I have more trust that, hey, if something happens, I can go down and talk to somebody versus just like some big national brand that they don't know who the people they're dealing with are, So there's multiple reasons for that, but local traffic generally converts at a much higher rate. So let's say you grew. I'm kind of working through this spreadsheet. And again, if you want to download that, pause the podcast, go download that spreadsheet and look at it while we're talking through it. That may be helpful to you as well. But so just to recap, we said, we had 500,000 visitors currently that our analytic data was showing us. And then we said, by implementing a new strategy, we think we can double that traffic in the first 12 months. So that's a net new organic visitors of 500,000. And then we could apply to that what we expect, what's our current conversion rate, right, on our website. So from all that organic traffic that you're generating, you want to know what percent of that traffic is converting into an actionable lead, whether that's signing up for a quote, it's downloading something, it's buying something, it's setting an appointment, it's, depending on your industry and what you do and what your calls to action are, you can look and you can see through analytics, if you have it set up correctly, what that conversion rate is specifically for your organic traffic. And then what we could do is apply, an increase to that if you want. So you could say, by localizing, we think we can improve, maybe conservatively, we're hoping we can improve conversion rate by 20%. So you can add in, that factor. So if you wanted to say, we think we can do it by, 40%, you could do that. So I'm just going to add a 20% expected increase in conversion rate. So that moved our conversion rate from 4% to 4.8%. And then that, if we take that new conversion rate and we times it by the net new organic visitors we've gained, through this new program, then it will give us kind of the net new leads that we're going to get as a result of implementing a local visibility program. So in my example here, I've got 500,000 net new organic visitors, a 4.8% conversion rate. So that equals 24,000 new leads from our local organic program. And then the next thing that you want to think about is, hey, we've got these leads, and this is more of a sales thing. So you're probably going to have to get this data from your sales team, your CRM. But of those leads that come in, what percentage of those are you closing? And that's why, if you haven't been tracking that organic, all the way through to which leads are generated from organic and then how are those closing, that really speaks to lead quality, some of those types of things, right? So you would expect to be able to get the same level of conversion rate on the new leads that you're generating, as you increase that visibility. So let's say you're converting 20% of your organic web leads today, and you feel that percentage is going to hold. So you can kind of plug that in as a good educated number, of what you should convert. So of the 24,000, we're going to say we're converting 20% of the leads that we're generating organically through the web into new customers, right? So 20% times 24,000 is 4,800 expected new customers from this effort. And then to kind of generate, how much revenue, you want to look again at your sales data and say, what's our average revenue per customer? Now, if you have a really broad offering, you could segment this down. If you have different landing pages and different conversion strategies or lead forms, or, obviously you want to be tracking calls as well. And I say that because in some industries that we work in, we'll have more, sometimes it's more than 10x phone calls to form fills. In other industries, it could be more like 50-50. So you have to really know, but you don't want to just this be like form fills. You also hopefully have some call tracking mechanisms in place where these are coming from organic. So you're getting kind of the full picture. If you only have form fills, you may want to look at that and say, okay, I need to put some kind of a factor in here to see like how many calls are we getting versus form fills. And you can kind of do the math on that. Like if you were getting, 7 times the calls to form fills, or if it was, 1-to-1, you could use that to kind of get at a more accurate number. But if you have the real data, that's even better. And sometimes people know that like, hey, if we get a call lead, that converts at a higher rate than a web form. So you can make that more complex if you want, or you can just, kind of use round numbers to give yourself a good kind of benchmark of what you should be able to expect. So if you don't have the data, there are ways to make educated guesses of what those things would be. But in a perfect world, you have all that data and you can really know what the numbers are. So in this case, in this example, this can obviously range widely. If you're selling custom homes, your average purchase, we have clients that we've talked to that their average sale is $1 million plus, right? And then you have things like, maybe you're a multi-location pizza place and, you can look at it as the average, order that somebody makes. The other thing that you could look at is what's that lifetime value of a customer, right? So if you're a pizza place and you get a new person, what percentage of those people become, long-term customers. So that kind of goes to what we call lifetime value of a customer. And there are a lot of different ways organizations figure that out. So if you know what your lifetime value of a customer is, you can use that. If you know just kind of what a general order is, or you have a product like if someone's putting shutters on their home or new windows, typically you're only doing that once every, many years. So, maybe it's just really the order total is all that you're really plugging in there. So when you figure that out, you simply take the expected new customers that we calculated, and you times that by the average revenue per customer, right? Or lifetime value of a customer. And then you're going to get a number. So in this case, I plugged in just like a $4,000 number. So say I'm selling a higher ticket, maybe I'm selling HVAC systems or, something a little bit more expensive. So we're saying our average order is $4,000. And so the expected net new revenue would be that 4,800 new customers that we generated through the process times the 4,000 gives us $19,200,000 as expected revenue. And then obviously, from that revenue, you could say, what's our average profit margin? And, in this case, I just said it's 20%. Sometimes it's lower than that. Sometimes it's higher than that. It just depends on your industry. And so I plugged in 20%, and that gave me an expected profit of $3.8 million. So that is kind of how it works at a very high level. You're just kind of plugging in the data. You're really understanding, hey, this is what we're currently doing. We've done this organic visibility report, and we see like there's just so much room for growth for us by moving up, a couple spots on average in the rankings is going to give us a big boost in how many people are seeing us when they're searching. We're going to get higher click-throughs, and we're going to generate more traffic. So, you kind of make an educated guess of what you think you can achieve. And you take that to get how much new organic traffic are you going to get? And then you look at your existing data and say, okay, how many of those people are converting into leads? And then how are we taking those leads, and how's our sales team doing of converting those organic leads into sales? What's our average dollar amount? And then you do the math and get your profit margin. And then that should give you a really good benchmark for, kind of what the return is going to be. So obviously that's the expected revenue side of it. And then if you want to really understand, okay, well, what's my ROI? Then you look at the cost. What is it going to cost you to implement this organic program, right? So typically you have some kind of a setup fee of kind of doing the work initially to get the program going, and then some ongoing monthly cost. So you just kind of add those all up for the year. So in our case, we price things out. Generally, there's some type of a setup. There's a monthly cost per location per month, for the service. If you're doing like content development, so let's say you're doing that in-house, you could assign, a cost to it. If you're doing everything in-house yourself, you can do the same thing, however you want to assign cost to that. And then you kind of calculate that up over a 12-month period. And you say, in the first year, it's going to cost us, X amount of dollars to put this in place. So then to calculate the ROI, you're simply, doing the math, and you're taking, the total net profit, minus the cost, and that gives you or kind of the expected profit that we talked about minus the cost of doing it, and then doing the division, and that gives you your program ROI. So that's as simple as we can make it, but just going through that exercise and making sure you have all the tracking mechanisms in place, you're getting that data currently, or you have a way to get it, and then kind of putting all those numbers together, it really can show you a great story of the opportunity that's sitting there for you as an organization that you're not taking advantage of currently. And then it can really help you get buy-in from your team, is to say, this is why this is a great investment, right, to go after this and to put a program in place. So, and then you could run that same kind of scenario on all the different marketing tactics you're either currently doing or that you're considering. So if you were looking at paid's a little easier, because we don't have to take as many educated guesses like we do in the organic sphere. We have a lot of data to back up, the growth in organic. It's just like getting the exact number of growth. Like, is it going to be 100% or 300%? A lot of that, you just have to apply some experience and, some case studies and things to that. And we help clients with that all the time. So if that's something you're looking at doing and you need a little help and some industry benchmarks and data, we'd absolutely, if you reach out to us, we'd be happy to help with that. Now on the paid side, basically, you have a pretty good idea up front of what the cost per click is going to be. Again, you don't always know what your conversion rates are. So if you look at your existing conversion rates, if you've never done paid before, you might have to get a little experience in doing that, where you're spending a little money just to kind of try to get some data. You can get some industry benchmarks, which we have a lot of data on, like what's a typical kind of click-through rate, conversion rate for some of these things. So with Google AdWords, for example, you only pay per click. And it's a bid system, so you don't always know exactly what you're going to get, but there are ranges and things that they give you up front, so you can kind of estimate that. And then, you can rerun these numbers when you get your real data in. So, you might say, okay, in each of our local markets, we're going to spend this much. Based on the keywords that we're looking at and the data that Google gives us, we can assume we're going to get about this many clicks, from that. We're going to send them back to this landing page. Our historical data shows we're converting at this rate. And again, that's going to show you how much you paid to get, how many leads. And then again, if you're a sales team, you can apply the same kind of conversion rates that you're doing for all, if all lead sources if it's variable, but if you're tracking that independently and you want to be more accurate, you can use data from paid search leads and see how those are converting. So you go through the same thing, of the leads that have come in, how many expected new customers do we get, and then you get kind of your average revenue per customer, and you times the new customer by that profit margin, and then you kind of get what your return is going to be for that digital ad campaign, right? Now, different digital ad campaigns will have, in our experience, like for example, if you're doing programmatic display, the purpose of programmatic display is more brand recognition. It doesn't convert at nearly as high of a rate as something like Google AdWords does, because Google AdWords has a super high degree of intent, because you're capturing people who are looking for exactly what you do in those local markets or things very similar to what you're doing. And so you can you're going to get a much higher conversion rate. With digital display, you're targeting a demographic, maybe content sites that are in line with people that would buy your product, those kinds of things, and you're really building awareness on those things. And so while there will be some conversion, it's not going to be as high, and there's other value that you're getting from that you have to try to ascribe a value to, right? So that can make it a little bit more difficult. And Facebook's kind of in between. I mean, you're able to target even more precisely and get more data than you can in programmatic display, but you're not always getting that like intent, like search intent, like you are with Google. So that's kind of what we've seen, and I think is pretty standard in the industry. Conversion, that display is going to convert a lot lower, but it's getting you in front of people that might not be looking for what you're doing. Facebook's kind of in between, and then AdWords is going to really give you that highest conversion rate. So whatever your marketing mix is, you can do that. When we think about things like business listings or reviews, some of those things, they're kind of difficult to quantify, but we know they make a huge impact in like your organic visibility, maybe the click-through rate that you're getting if you're showing up in like Google My Business. Those can be a really powerful lead generators as well, and they're all kind of part of that equation. I kind of lump those in generally into the whole organic visibility bucket because they're really important to that side of things. And so but you can kind of do what you want. If you have more specific data from those channels, you can do that. And then the same thing would apply, to any other type of channel. You're just really looking at what does it cost me to get this program set up? What does it cost me to run it? What is the media cost to get in front of people? And then, you look at, what number of customers do you expect to call in or generate a lead? Of those leads, what percentage are going to convert to a customer? And then, you just, average revenue per customer, you run it out until you get kind of an expected profit. And then, it's a great exercise to go through with all the channels that you're using or you're considering and try to think through those. And then what you can do is kind of prioritize them, from a spreadsheet perspective and really get an idea of what's giving you the most bang for the buck, what has the highest ROI based on some good data. So like with the spreadsheet that we're using, if you download that, you can certainly customize it. You can add fields, you can do things, and you can make it as intricate as you want, as long as all the math makes sense and works. So the spreadsheet that we put together is pretty simple, but it gives you a good starting point and an outline to go from. And when you do that, it's just a really powerful tool, like I said, to get buy-in from your team, to do the things that you want to be able to do, to think about prioritization of marketing efforts, and then also to get buy-in, at the local level from your local network of people representing your brand and selling your products and services.
Awesome.
I know that's a lot. So
I learned a lot. I know this one. Yeah, I learned a lot more than I learned some of that too. Well, cool. Anything else you want to add, Matt? I think you covered kind of the entire sheet and kind of added some other stuff on there that's really helpful, just in terms of how you can use this to, apply it to other channels.
It's just an invaluable tool, from a marketing perspective, to really know how those things are working, having it all in one place, looking at the upside and priority. And I know people probably do that a lot more with like digital ads and things because the data is more readily available, but it's so worth, putting in the work to get the data. If you don't have it now, put it in place so that 6 months, 12 months down the road, you really have access to those kinds of things. And they're just going to really give you so much clarity in the things that you're doing and what's working and where you should be spending your dollars. So, for example, one of the things that we've really seen across a lot of our clients is that organic generally, in every case that I've seen, is far and away like the most cost-effective source of leads because it's always there, it's always on, it's evergreen, your budget doesn't run out, But organic's kind of like a freight train. It's more of a long-term play. It's going to take you 6 months to get up to speed and get going, and then it'll generally continue to grow consistently. I mean, we've had clients 8-9 years consecutively getting high double-digit and sometimes even triple-digit growth year over year through a local organic visibility program. And the reason for that is they're starting to get more and more traction and more authority in each of their local markets. They're rising up the keyword rankings for more and more terms. They're sweeping in primary geographies and secondary geographies. And so over time, as you build more and more authority, you just do better and better. And, you start getting rewarded for that over time. And that's great. Now with paid ads, it's like, I kind of use the analogy of like a jet plane. It's, it gets up to speed like instantly. Like you could start running ads today and start getting traffic tomorrow. So it gives you an immediate result, but the jet fuel can be very expensive. So you're burning jet fuel very quickly. And if you don't have a good strategy and you go into it, you can burn through a lot of money that can be wasted. So it does really take some time, on the digital side to hone in all the different levers, your audience, the keywords, the negative keywords, like everything that you need to do, your bids, to get that ideal positioning and kind of mix it that really makes sense and is going to be profitable for you. And then, the landing pages that you're sending people back to are also very important in terms of, how high of a conversion rate you have. And so the more that that's tied together, where there's locality in both the ad copy and the landing page, and you're tying those things together, that really improves your conversion rate significantly. And just different tactics that you can use for best practices on landing pages. And so a few percentage points could make or break your campaign, And the other thing to think about is lifetime value of a customer, right? So sometimes people will actually try to just break even, or they're even comfortable with losing money on what it costs to get them a lead through paid channels because they know the lifetime value of the customer will make up for that. But it just depends really on how competitive your industry is. If there's a lot of competition, those ads get built, the bids get bid up, so that you're paying more, and it can squeeze out people sometimes. So having these kinds of tools can really help you see that and really decide, what's worth spending on, how long do we keep going. But understand, like, no matter what channel that you're using, there's a period of time where you can dial that in and you can hone it in and improve it. So you got to kind of go into that with eyes wide open and then make sure that you're, exploring all the different options that are available to you. So organic tends to be, the highest return. AdWords does a pretty good job. It just, again, depending on the industry. But even things like offline, like you may find that direct mail really works well for you, or certain publications. But there are ways to track those things too. Creating landing pages. Again, the localization matters in conversion rate. So even if you're doing it, best practice is to always send people back to a localized landing page where they feel like it's part of their local community, and you're going to see your conversion rates improve. But you can still track and measure all those things, and then you plug in those numbers into your spreadsheet and you see how it's doing and how it's doing compared to the other things that you're doing. And that's a real kind of high level basic approach to it. But just starting there, again, I think I used this in the last podcast as well. But if you want something to improve, the first step is to measure it. not only that, but just having, the insights as to what are the right tactics to use, and putting this data to it gives you a lot better idea than not having any data. Now, you might go through the process and maybe it didn't work out exactly how you thought, and maybe you have to adjust some of the numbers. Like we were converting at 20% of leads, but then when we started doing this direct mail, they were only converting at 10%. So if you know that, that's great, and you can try to understand why. Are you getting the right list? Is it the right target demo? Is there something, that's where you put on your marketing hat. You can try to figure out those things, but at least the data is showing you, and you have a starting point. You have the best numbers that you can come up with at the time, and then you try to get better and better data, and more granular data as you implement these things over time, and that makes your numbers even better and better. And then you really are adding value to your whole marketing operation by doing that.
Great. Well, I think that about wraps us up, Matt.
Thank you. A lot. One more thing I would add.
Yeah, go ahead.
In a multi-location scenario, so like that's hard enough to do if you're just doing it for one business, one website. But when you start to scale it, and let's say you have 100 locations or you have 50 locations, getting all this data, pulling it together and rolling it up is really difficult. So you're going to need some tech to be able to do that. So at MarketSnare, that's one of the things that we do, but there's other tools. There's, Tableau, there's reporting tools. Google has a data studio tool that's free. So there are ways that you can, try to get all that data at the local level, having localized landing pages, pulling all that data into one source, rolling it up so it makes it easy for you to kind of keep an eye on what's going on across everything. And that's another thing that I would really encourage you to do. So, figuring all these things out, but then getting the data from all these disparate, local markets can be a challenge, but having that is worth it because it tells you everything, everything of what you're doing and the results you're getting. So seek out some technology. If you need some assistance, we'd be happy to help you, give you some ideas and thoughts on that. But it can become a beast, when you have all these different marketing programs going on. And sometimes you just don't have the data. Like if you have independent dealers you might not have visibility into their sales funnel and pipeline. So you try to do the best job that you can, or, get a sampling of dealers that will allow you or share that data with you. If you can provide something that has a CRM that all your leads are going into, and then your sales, that you can kind of close the loop on those things, that is immensely valuable to have. So not everybody's there. Sometimes for political reasons or the reason how your organization's structured, it's impossible to get that data. So you might have to plug in, best guesses, maybe from conversations you're having, from your own data, maybe from customers that are coming direct. There's a lot of ways to get that, but, don't be disheartened by that, but think about strategies for how can we get this data. We might not have it today, but how can we start putting things in place to get them? And you've got to think about scale, and you've got to think about your local network, your relationship with those people. How can you, convince them, if they don't have to give you that data or you don't have it, to participate in that and the value for them. But the more of that you have, the more accurate you can get on these things, the more you can really dial in your marketing spends and your channels. And that's going to go a long way towards, maximizing your ROI in each market.
I love that. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next week on the Multi-Location Marketing Show. Again, if you want to download that sheet we walked through today, that'll be available in the show notes. Thanks, everyone.